Oh my goodness. I don't know how to react to this. I don't know how to start this video. Welcome. This is going to be a CONCACAF World Cup qualifier road to Russia video, which I must put out by tomorrow. And you will be seeing this on Wednesday. My name is Brian. And what in the world just happened right now? Big news in the CONCACAF qualifiers. The final day of qualifying in the hexagonal. I'm going to say that in Spanish because I can say it perfectly like that. But the standings headed into this match day was Mexico was in the lead with, I can't remember the point. Mexico was the already qualified to the World Cup. Costa Rica was in second place. U.S. with the victory on Friday, this past Friday, which was I can't even believe it was the 8th. Had a 4 victory versus Panama, had 12 points. Panama was sitting in the playoff spot at 10 points. Honduras was sitting in the 5th place spot looking in. The first team out looking in with 10 points as well. Trinidad and Tobago was in the last spot, just essentially eliminated. They had no chance of qualifying at all. They were already only at 3 points in the whole qualifying phase. But we came into today with those standings, and the first team to play was the U.S. versus Trinidad and Tobago. U.S. was visiting Trinidad and Tobago in a crucial must-win match, and the U.S. did not go out and do their job. It was plain and simple. I'm not going to oversimplify it. The U.S. had to go into that match in Trinidad and Tobago to win. They could not have done anything else. They could not have been, oh, I need a tie, blah, blah, blah. They needed to go in. A tie would have helped. A victory would have solidified them a spot in. They didn't have to go through the playoff system. They would have had an automatic qualifying bid into the World Cup. And they decided to screw the pooch, in a way to say that, because 45 minutes into the game, the end of the first half, it ended with a 2-0 lead for the home team, who had nothing to play for but pride. Trinidad and Tobago was just playing the rest of this tournament for pride. And they went out striking thunder. They took down the U.S. 2-1. The final score was 2-1. With the defeat, it opened the door for Panama and Honduras, who both had 10 points apiece. They had a must-win situation as well to make their spots into the World Cup and eliminate the U.S. And what did these guys do? They went out and did their jobs. Panama won 2-1 against Costa Rica, one of the best teams in the CONCACAF right now. And Honduras, obviously, I don't know the squads. I will look the squads up. I'll put links to the squads. I'll put links to everything that happened to these match news, stuff like that. But Honduras wanted to go do their job as well. They were hosting Mexico, the team that had nothing to play for anymore. They were already qualified. They just wanted to go play and just get better before they go into that World Cup. What did they do? What did Honduras do? They said, we need to step up our game. They won 3-2 at home against Mexico, doing what they needed to do and solidify their spot into the World Cup. Obviously, they did not get a foot in. They were able to get to the playoff spot because of goal differential became a huge factor, because they both scored 13 points apiece, and that added up to 13 points. 3 points apiece added up 13 points, but the goal differential was different. I believe it was a three goal differential difference between Panama and Honduras. But they're in. Mexico, automatic qualifier. Costa Rica, the second team, automatic qualifier. Panama making their first trip to a World Cup in their Football Federation history. I am completely glad for them. They earned this one. Props to them. But they need to show better football after that 4-0 defeat against the U.S. here in Orlando. They need to play better. But Honduras, obviously, they went out and did their job. They pulled off a 1-1 draw against Costa Rica in the last game, which was a Saturday match, because Central America was hit by Tropical Storm Nate, and obviously they had to push that match day back a day because it was not in playable. The stadium wasn't in playable condition. The storm was running through during when match time was going to hit, so it was completely impossible for the game to play. but they ended up getting tied, which ended up helping them very greatly heading into this match. And now they are into a playoff spot against Australia. Australia winning their game against Serbia. Serbia. They're playing their match to go into the playoff spot. Australia won 2-1 with a goal from Tim Cahill. He's still around. He's like Gigi Buffon, who will not retire from international soccer. But good on them. But it's going to be very interesting when that playoff match comes around, because we are less than a year away from that World Cup, and it's very interesting because you have big teams, 3 big teams that are already out. U.S. is not qualified. Chile got knocked out earlier in the day as well in the South American qualifiers. And Holland had an impossible task to go in to do, and they were not able to capitalize, and they got eliminated as well. These are big teams. Don't make it. Portugal was in verge of going to a playoff spot. Right now, you see the smaller teams, the smaller nations, not even smaller teams, smaller nations, not the big nations like Brazil, Argentina, Germany, Spain, Italy. We have Panama, Iceland. They both qualified automatically to the World Cup. They did their work. They knew what they needed to do. These other teams did not come to qualify. They just came here because they had to qualify. That leads me to the U.S., which is why I started off, which I don't know how to react to this. This is the first time since 1989 that the U.S. has not qualified to the World Cup. ESPN, I will put this picture up. ESPN put a picture of a list of things that had happened since then. The last one was Ronald Reagan was the United States president the last time the U.S. didn't miss the World Cup. And Oprah barely debuted. That is mind-blowing. And it's just, what did they do wrong? You could say it was the coaches. You could say it was the players. It was not backing for the federation. There's so many things that contribute to this whole thing. It's an ESPN, their analysts are saying this is an embarrassment. It is an embarrassment. The U.S. not qualifying to the World Cup is the biggest hit this soccer federation has taken. Their soccer, this is just proving that their soccer needs to improve. The guys that they are calling up are not ready. Either they're too old, they don't want to play, they don't have enough experience. There are so many things that contribute to these things. But the U.S. team that went over to Trinidad and Tobago to try to qualify a World Cup was not the team you saw in Brazil in 2014. It wasn't the team that you saw 2 years prior to that qualified perfectly, that was in the first place, that was already qualified like Mexico was this time around. That's not the team that we're seeing anymore. It's not the World Cup team from 2010. It's not the World Cup team from 2006. These are different. All these players. Many of the players, Josie Altidore, Clint Dempsey, they were on the team. DeMarcus Beasley, those 3 players were on the team back in 2006. And that these guys are still playing in this time is just mind-boggling, that they're still being called up. Obviously, they still have great physiques. In that time, they still had years to go in soccer. But the only player of those 3 that is still at high caliber, possibly, and not even high caliber, that still plays decently well, shows up, knows what he has to do, is DeMarcus Beasley in the defense. You want to see Josie Altidore and Clint Dempsey? Obviously, they score goals, but when it's during the 90 minutes of match, and it's not a free kick, it's not a corner kick, it's not a stop ball, I don't see them doing much. They just wait around for the ball. Josie Altidore, I've seen them run the ball, but he's been flopping, and that is the perfect term to use. He flops around so much nowadays. It is sad. I used to like this guy when he played back in before the 2010 World Cup, from like 2007 to 2010 when he got injured. But since then, I can't keep up with it, because he's been moving around teams so much before he came and settled in Toronto FC. No European team could settle in on him. He was a bench player coming in, and that was very occasional. You got players nowadays that are bench players and doing a better job in Europe, because Josie Altidore was in Europe. Clint Dempsey was in Europe. You had Landon Donovan back then. He was in Europe as well. Those 3 players didn't make it. But nowadays you got younger kids who are actually making their worth out in Europe. You got Chris Buslick, who came to the squad. You cannot put pressure on that kid. He is starting off well. He is doing his job. but you cannot put a full pressure of a World Cup qualification on him. He does not have the experience of this kind of thing. Going into next qualifications, he will have the experience. He will know what he needs to do as a player, as a leader of that locker room. But this time around, if you put that pressure on him to be a leader, to go out and be a leader for that squad, anybody who says that or whoever thinks, oh, he should have done better, you are completely wrong. He is not ready for this. He's not had experience. Oh, you can say he plays with Borussia Dortmund. He does play with Borussia Dortmund, but that is at a club level. Obviously they play the Champions League, the UEFA Champions League, but that is club level. You play players from Europe, from South America, from the Africa continent. You play against people who are from different nations that come into one club to play for one goal, win titles, and make yourself a name. But what the U.S. is trying to do, bringing experience. Obviously, understand they need experience. They need younger guys. But this team was not a team. This was not a. This is one thing I said going into this. Just talking to people, they need to be a unit to get their job done. They weren't a unit going into this World Cup. They were just like, okay, as long as we score, we'll be fine. As long as we can get a lead, we'll be fine. They thought they had that kind of method. If you use that kind of method in soccer, it won't get you far. You may get wins, you may get losses. You're not going to go far. It's mind-boggling that the U.S. try to use this kind of tactic because a lot of their games, they were just like, okay, we're winning, and they would start defending more than trying to get the ball forward and attack. And now it goes into maybe what do the coaches do their job? Were they telling the players what to do? I was seeing a comment. It's the coach's fault. Blame them. The coach has to be canned. To that person, I replied to that person. That is completely wrong. That it is partly the coach's fault, but also it is mainly the player's fault. The coach does not go on that field for 90 minutes and play and have to do. Obviously, he's on the sidelines for those 90 minutes, but the people who are playing are the 11 men that team that is representing that crest, their nation. If they don't want to play, then why are they playing for a World Cup? Why are they playing for their nation? If you're not going to come out and play and do your job and try to make sure your team qualifies to a World Cup, why are you here? Why are you playing soccer? Are you just out to make the money, or are you just for the fame? Because soccer is now developing to the sport where it's, oh, I want the fame, I want everything. Understandable. You want money, you want fame, you want all that stuff. But the issue is that the U.S. is not ready to be doing this thing. U.S. needs to start thinking, oh, we need to start playing well. We need to go make sure we have players that are going to play well to get us to a World Cup. Because if not, we may be on the verge of missing the World Cup. Obviously, there's the issues of head coaches. You had Jurgen Klinsmann, who was not the greatest coach of the U.S. Maybe people praised him when he was during the World Cup back in 2014. But in my opinion, he was not the best coach. I won't say he's the worst coach, but he was never, ever on par with any of the other coaches in U.S. history. You can have players. You can have the interim coaches. Assistant coaches come in, and they would have done a way better job than what Jurgen Klinsmann did. But then once he got fired after the 2-1 loss at home against Mexico, you bring Bruce Arena in. Bruce Arena had to play full because mathematically, the U.S. had to go without any losses in the World Cup qualifiers to have a chance for automatic bid. They may have slipped up. I did the math during that time. They could have had a slip up here or there, but they could not have slipped up more than 3 times. That was including a tie, a draw. Obviously, a tie and a draw are the same thing. A draw or a loss. The U.S. has had those things during the run since Bruce Arena came in. Bruce Arena said, oh, we lost once this year. Understandable. Now you've lost twice this year. What is your excuse for that? Obviously, you cannot put too much blame on the coach because they have their job they have to do. They can tell the players what to do. If the players don't do it on the field, how are you going to get a win? You're going to throw the blame on the coach. You're going to go federation. It's also blame on the players. The players have to come out and do their job. They're not going to go out and just stand there for 45 minutes in the first half, go into the locker room, get told by the coach, hey, we need to improve on this. Hey, what if we move this player in? We put this player in. Maybe this will change this. Maybe we'll do this. If the player's like, okay, sure, and don't agree, just say, okay, sure, and don't execute, That is where the U.S. failed. The U.S. had too many players that said, "Okay, sure, that's completely fine. I agree with this. Let's do it." Come game time, come back from the second half. You do not see that kind of mindset. You can say we try to be a team, we try to be a unit, we tried our best. Obviously, okay, if you tried your best, you will be in a World Cup right now. You'll be in a playoff spot. You will not be sitting in your butts on the plane back home to the U.S. just thinking and contemplating on what happened in that loss. That was a team, Trinidad and Tobago. All the props to them. All the props to them, honestly, because on Friday they did an impossible feat and scored a goal in Mexico. They were, and this is Trinidad and Tobago, a Caribbean team that scored against Mexico, had the lead for about 12 minutes. Obviously, you can say that was a little time. This was the 60th minute that goal was scored. At the 78th, Mexico tied. It took them 10 more minutes to get the lead. And the U.S. couldn't do anything, just could score after they're losing. Trinidad and Tobago had 45 minutes in the first half. They scored 2 goals. U.S. had 45 minutes in the second half. They scored 1 goal. That was their downfall. They don't come out to play. They just play. They just are happy how they play. The U.S. needs to bring in different style. Need to do different things. Their players have to do different stuff. The way that they play right now, the players, not even the coaches, how the coaches tell them to move. The formations, obviously, it's completely different. How the team, as the U.S. team works together, that's where it's downfall. The U.S. team doesn't work together. They try to be very individual. Obviously you see them passing the ball during the match, but it is not working. The style that the U.S. uses to pass the ball is not working. It is completely flawed. The U.S. has better tactics. The U.S. It's been maybe 4 years now since the U.S. has beaten a high name league team, and it was Mexico in Columbus in a qualifier, and it was a 2-0 victory. The last time that I remember that they beat someone big. Want to know another team for the CONCACAF that beat a team that's had a World Cup? Put it in that. Costa Rica 2014. Obviously Mexico as well may have been beating big teams. But if you want to look at teams that have done something and made worth of their time in a World Cup or in a qualifier, look at no further, and this is excluding Mexico. I'm excluding Mexico because Mexico is always the heavyweight in the CONCACAF. They're always a heavyweight. You can never start an argument without saying obviously Mexico is included there. Let's exclude Mexico for this moment. Look at Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, the other 3 teams that are 2 teams that are in and 1 in the playoff. Costa Rica last World Cup in 2014 were in the group of champions. They faced Uruguay, who has won 4 different World Cups. Italy, that's won 4 different World Cups. England, that's won 1 World Cup. Those teams have World Cup victories. Costa Rica never's won a World Cup. Obviously, they never had the strong enough soccer to do it. They have teams that can make it far in the tournament, but there are some strategies that outweigh a great team. But in that group, you would think, oh, maybe they qualified in second place. Oh, they didn't make it through. Costa Rica qualified as the leader of that group. They won 3-1 against Uruguay in their first match day. They won 1-0 versus Italy in their second match day. And they went to tie 1-1 with England in their final match day to qualify as the first place team in that match. And then they went on to the round of 16 to play against Greece, a 1-1 draw that went to penalty kicks after extra time. Stayed 1-1, went to a penalty kick shootout. Goalkeeper came on strong. Keylor Navas did his job and qualified Costa Rica to the round of 8. In the round of 8, they had to do another feat. They were facing Holland, who was coming off an impressive run, who in the World Cup before that was in the final. Want to know what they did? They went 120 minutes against Holland, one of the best European nations there wasn't in that time during that World Cup in 2014. And they went to extra time, to a penalty shootout, and were this close, to making to the semifinals. The last team who did that was the U.S. back in the very first World Cup. And that Costa Rica in 2014 almost made it to the semifinal. Says a huge gap difference between Costa Rican soccer and the U.S. soccer. U.S. soccer has not been on par at all with Costa Rican soccer. The only reason that Costa Rica lost in the Gold Cup this past summer to the U.S. because the U.S. brought high caliber players and were playing for that tournament. Costa Rica brought their players to play for the tournament, but they knew they didn't have their star goalkeeper. And they still made it to the semifinals and put on a better showing than the U.S. did. In the World Cup qualifiers, Costa Rica was just cruise controlling. Their only their only two losses came to Mexico when Costa Rica went to go play Mexico in a 1-0 loss, and then against Panama today in a 2-1 loss. The only time they've lost was by 1 goal differential. The goals they received in those losses, 3 goals. They scored 1. But it is just mind-boggling that the U.S. lost. And then when the U.S. faced, just to backtrack a little, when the U.S. faced Costa Rica in this same qualifying cycle, they lost 2-0 at home. The U.S. has so many things they need to change. The U.S. has players they need to stop bringing up. They need to bring new people. They need to bring people that are ready. Jesse Sardes is a player that is ready, but obviously in the LA Galaxy, he's not getting play. He's getting decent playing time. But at the U.S. level, at the senior team level, he's not getting time. There are so many players in the U.S. Chris Wodolowski from San Jose. He is a caliber player. He plays with Marcos Ureñas from Costa Rica, who was a huge contributor to Costa Rica beating the U.S. He scored both goals, and he is a huge factor why Costa Rica is in that World Cup. And this is just boggling that the U.S. cannot find players. That there are players in the U.S. They pick all their 95% of their players. I may be mistaken on that percentage, but most of the players in their squad right now are from the MLS. And what they just proved that the MLS is not a competitive league. And that is false. The MLS is a competitive league. But the players that the U.S. Federation, the U.S. coaches decided to bring up to this World Cup were not showing of this league. They just showed how pathetic this league is. And I know this league is not pathetic because there's so many teams that are very good, top of the league right now, that can compete with teams from Mexico, from South America, Central America, Canada teams. They all compete. I know this league can compete at that level. But the players that got picked to go represent the United States from this league were not the players that represent this league. They are not the best players. There are so many better players. And the players that got picked from this league that didn't play, they didn't get a chance to show themselves because the U.S. wanted to play it safe and play players that the other nations already know how they're going to play. You need to switch up your style, or if these players are good enough to change their style. These players that were brought up do not change their style. And sorry if I stutter there. I'm going to keep that in. But it is mind-boggling. Clint Dempsey, Josie Altidore, you got some midfielders who don't change their style. You got some defenders who don't change their style. If you don't change your style when you're playing these kind of World Cup high-caliber matches, and you can say, oh, it's against Honduras. Oh, it's against Panama. It's against Costa Rica. The only big matches against Mexico. No. You are sadly mistaken. The thing you need to worry about is that is a World Cup match. It don't matter who you're playing against. It matters what you're playing for. And if you're not going to go play for a World Cup qualifying berth, then you should not play. You should just sit there and let them score and have them, or just forfeit the match. Because that is just pathetic. But that is my complete rant, opinion, and kind of breakdown of what just happened today. If you dislike me for this, then I apologize, but that is my opinion. I will put links to everything, the news articles. I will be looking at this more thoroughly, and in a couple days I'll do another video with all the 2 complete teams that are going to the World Cup. But with that said, I've been Brian, and I will see you guys in the next video.